Now let's get a bit more insight into the performance of the economy in 2017. I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by a partner and tax lead for West Africa, Deloitte and Touche, and economic analyst, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10 tonight.
Thank you so very much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. So how would you describe our economic story in 2017? We've seen the ups and downs. What was it like for you?
Well, I think 2017 is a particularly tough year, but I think the good news is that we are ending on a far better note than we kicked off the year.
Yeah, indeed, it has been a tough year for many, no doubt. But let's talk about the optimism that greeted the exit of the recession. And many analysts had predicted about an 18-month cycle. Were you surprised that we exited much quicker than predicted?
Well, I would say I was surprised, but I think it's that kind of a pleasant surprise is what you will expect. And judging by the series of efforts and strategy that the federal government put in place to fight the recession, I think it's quite pleasing that we got out of it the way we did.
Which of the interventions did you see as the most impactful, shall we say, in exiting that recession? There were a number of them from the CBN as well. Which one did you, can you pinpoint?
I think the economy worked with interconnection of a number of initiatives. So it may be a disservice to say one was more instrumental than the other, but if I must just lay my hand on one, I think the effort of the Presidential Enabling Council that was set up by the federal government and headed by the Vice President himself, and a whole lot of effort that the Secretariat put in place to making sure that we do all that we can to improve the business environment and show up our revenue. I think those efforts were hugely significant. So on one side, I would say the efforts of the Secretariat working for the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, as well as a number of efforts that were directed towards shoring up our non-oil tax revenue. I think they were responsible because our major challenge was that we had huge revenue shortage.
All right, some say it's a bit difficult to celebrate the interventions and all the measures that facilitated that exit because it's been a tough year, a serious belt-tightening year for people. There's much less cash to spend than they ever have had. So how can sustainable growth trickle down to the populace, do you think?
Well, I think sustained effort is all we need. Those interventions are very well directed. I think they're very well thought through. And the fact that we got out of recession isn't by fluke. It required a lot of hard work. But I think the pessimism from people is born out of the fact that beyond the statistics, beyond the fact that we're now back on the positive growth in terms of GDP, it will take a while before the trickle-down effect spread across the country. But I can tell you that judging by the feelers and the experiences that many of the businesses share with us, it's very clear to conclude that businesses are in a much better state than they were this time last year.
All right, finally now, what would you say would be your forecast, let me say, looking at all the economic indices, including interest rate, exchange rate, inflation, GDP? What do you predict for 2018 as we move into a new year now?
Well, I think if we sustain the current effort that is ongoing, I think the movement is only up and to the right. Yeah, I see the economy get a lot better. Some of the challenges and the fear is that 2018 is the pre-election year, and there's a lot of concerns around how much concentration can the federal government still get. And but judging by what we're hearing, I think the promise is that we're going to allow politics to take a second place while we continue to focus on our own economy. So my own expectation will be if we do as much as we can to focus on the economy, because in 2017, it was practically half the year that we have in trying to replace the economy from the budget and making sure that we spend on the capital project because the budget was signed midway into the year 2017. 2018 budget is still with the National Assembly. So if we manage to get it out of the National Assembly as quickly as possible and effort at implementing the budget get started as early as possible, I think the growth that is projected in the budget for 2018, it's realizable.
All right, partner and tax lead for West Africa, Deloitte and Touche, and economic analyst, Mr. Yomi Olugbenro. Thanks for joining us on the News at 10 tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.